In a world obsessed with perfection, Clara believed beauty was flawless, straight and smooth. But in a small Vietnamese craft village, she was about to learn that true beauty isn't found in perfection at all. It's hidden in the subtle imperfections that carry the soul of the person who made them. In America, we design machines to replace hands. But here, hands are used to preserve memories, to keep the lineage of generations alive. Clara never imagined that a single thread could pull her life away from the endless chase for profit and efficiency, and lead her to a place where people still move slowly, where work is a devotion, not just a transaction. Clara arrived at the village on a damp morning. A winding path cut through vibrant green rice paddies and past red-tiled roofs streaked with moss. From somewhere deep within the village came the rhythmic clatter of looms, a steady, quiet heartbeat. The driver left her at the edge of a narrow lane, where a weathered wooden sign read, "Ancestor S. Silk Village, preserving 100 years of craft." As she walked into the alley, she was enveloped by the smells of dye, boiling water, and faint wood smoke. The air was thick with the scent of labor, and beneath the mechanical clatter was the soft murmur of women talking. Their hands moved swiftly, almost dancing as they guided the threads. Clara witnessed a scene that was both simple and extraordinary. No one was watching the clock. No one rushed. Each person seemed engaged in something far more important than just weaving silk. They were preserving a fragment of their own lives, their own history. She was led to the home of Mrs. Tu, a petite woman in her 60s, with grey-streaked hair and eyes as sharp as the thread she worked. On the table before her lay a piece of golden silk, shimmering under the sunlight, streaming through the window. Mrs. Tu spoke slowly, carefully, her voice gentle yet firm. "You have to breathe with the craft, miss. If the thread moves too fast, it breaks. Too slow, and it tangles. Every weaver must learn to hear the thread." Clara smiled awkwardly. She had never heard someone speak to an object as if it were alive, but as she watched Mrs. Tu's hands, she fell silent. Every motion wasn't just labor, it was meditation. Then came the invitation to try weaving herself. Clara's fingers fumbled. The thread snarled and caught on the loom. One snapped with a soft, final pop. But Mrs. Tu didn't scold her. She only chuckled gently and said, "No thread has not broken at some point. The important part is knowing how to mend it, so it remains beautiful." Those words struck Clara like a bell. Memories flooded back, times in her own life when her threads had frayed, losing jobs, failing relationships, leaving New York in a desperate search for meaning, and never before had she known how to reconnect them. Back in Manhattan, Clara had worked in high-end fashion, managing global production chains. A single dress could be finished in 8 minutes, thanks to 12 workers in Bangladesh and 3 automated machines. Efficiency was hailed as the ultimate form of perfection. Yet at every product launch she felt hollow, as though she had orchestrated a performance completely devoid of a soul. Now, watching Mrs. Tu weave in a tiny, sunlit room, Clara saw the complete opposite. Here, efficiency wasn't the measure of value. Instead, integrity and devotion were what mattered most. Clara sat, studying the slowly forming silk. Each thread was slightly misaligned, yet those tiny imperfections were exactly what gave the cloth its life. In the West, such misalignments would be labeled as defects, but here they were called the fingerprints of the artisan. A gnawing shame filled her chest. All those years she had spent optimizing processes, had she just been draining her work of its humanity? "I've made thousands of things," she thought, her throat tightening, without ever truly creating anything. By the afternoon, Mrs. Tu stoked a small fire for dyeing. The red-orange glow painted her wrinkled face, her eyes sparkling with a quiet pride. Clara asked, "Have you ever thought of stopping, letting the children pursue easier lives?" Mrs. Tu shook her head and pointed at her own hands. "If I stop, the thread will break. People today work to survive. I live to do this work. In every piece of silk, I hear my mother and my grandmother. As long as my hands tremble, I can still hear them." Clara gazed at the flickering flame and, for the first time, felt a deep longing to belong to something, a continuum that stretched beyond individual existence. In America, she had power, money, and a reputation, but she had no roots. She had always drifted from company to company, city to city. Yet here, these small women, who had never left their village, possessed the one thing she lacked most, an anchor. That night, as rain tapped gently on the tiled roof, Clara stayed behind. The looms continued their ceaseless rhythm, the village's heartbeat. She sat alone, gazing at the half-finished silk. Each thread stretched, intertwined, and looped to form a shape larger than itself. She thought of her own life, a collection of frayed threads, broken strands, and hastily patched repairs. She had never stopped long enough to truly reconnect them. A creeping guilt rose within her. She had always believed that success was measured by speed. Now she realized that so much of her loss had stemmed from that very speed. Maybe, she whispered to herself, I've never lived slowly enough to see something truly become beautiful. Tears streamed down her face, not from sorrow, but from the sudden, overwhelming realization of being truly present for the first time in years. The next morning, Mrs. Tu handed Clara a small piece of silk. It was no bigger than her hand, yet it shimmered with the colors of the dawn. "Keep this," Mrs. Tu said, "not to sell but to remind yourself. Some things are only beautiful when they are made slowly." Clara clutched the silk, tears glistening in her eyes. It was as light as a breath, yet it felt heavy with an unspoken promise. As she left the village, she turned back one last time. The women were still at their looms, laughing, chatting, and threading. No one had asked who she was, and no one needed to. Yet somehow, they had taught her what the industrialized world never could. True value does not reside in the product. It resides in what remains of the maker's heart after the creation is complete. On the bus back to the city, Clara stared out the window at the silks fluttering along the road. How many lives had been woven into these threads? How much patience, how many unseen hours? She recalled the board meetings, the spreadsheets, the endless debates about efficiency, profit margins, and growth projections. Now, all those words felt empty. Mrs. Tu had only her loom, her thread, and a heart that never rested. Yet within that simplicity lay something the industrial world desperately sought: meaning. Clara whispered, almost like a confession to herself. "I thought I was weaving a career, but perhaps I've only been adding meaningless threads." And in that moment she finally understood. The thread does more than connect pieces of silk. It connects human beings to the dignity of their labor. The modern world teaches us speed, but it often makes us forget depth. Technology can multiply output, but only the human heart can multiply meaning. In the West, we fear wasted time, but in that small Vietnamese craft village, people give their time willingly, and in doing so, they create true beauty. Clara left the village, but in her mind the looms kept clattering, a steady heartbeat reminding her that some things only exist if we slow down enough to notice them. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey. If this story resonated with you, please consider liking this video and subscribing for more stories that explore the beauty of a slower, more meaningful life. See you next time.